Hello.
Hi, I think it's worked.
Yes. Woo, we're in action. We haven't got anyone just yet. So we'll hang on a couple of minutes just in case anyone's joining. If not, oh, we've got someone. Hello, Nikki. Nice to join us. I hope you are okay. We'll get started then, I think. Right. Hopefully some more people will join us, but that's lovely. Thank you very much, Nikki, for joining us. Let us know in the comments whether you are a parent or what your role is in terms of education, what sort of support you're looking for. My name's Jenna. I am a tutor now, but I trained in early years and was a nursery teacher. Simon, do you want to talk about what your role is?
Yeah, I've been teaching for over 20 years. My sort of speciality is early years, SEND, and particularly sort of children who are neurodivergent. And presently, I'm working as an early years intervention teacher.
So lots of knowledge, lots of experience, which is fab. So I approached Simon about doing a little live about children starting nursery in January, based on both of our experiences. And I thought it'd be a good idea just to go over different things like starting nursery, that kind of thing, preparation, how to help children get ready, how to what happens in the first few weeks and that kind of thing. I'm going to do it from a nursery teacher's point of view, and Simon, you're going to come in with the SEND advice and elements to help children. So bear with me as I just look through my notes, so make sure. So first of all, we'll talk about how parents can support children getting ready for nursery. So for me, what I used to say to parents coming into starting at school with their children in nursery was that I used to say, before children come to nursery, start talking about nursery, start talking about the teachers, start talking about all going to school soon, if it is in a school setting or if it's not, going to nursery. Start maybe getting some books, maybe starting school books, starting nursery books, and showing those. And also a big one for me is, including a child in their preparation for nursery. So if they need a uniform, take them with them to get the uniform. If they need any little stationery, if they're getting a new lunch box, take them with you to kind of involve them in that. And so they know it's theirs and something new and exciting is happening. I know parents can be really anxious, which is very, very, very normal, but trying to keep, going somewhere new to nursery very positive. What can you advise from a SEND point of view, Simon? Oh, have I lost everybody?
I think that a lot of what you said can also apply to SEND children and emerging SEND children, in that, once you've decided on the setting for your child for nursery, I think it's really important to have time for the child to, if there's a uniform expected, they should wear the uniform before they go into nursery. So, around the house, put the uniform on so they get used to the feel of it. Because quite often, sometimes with neurodivergent children, it's things like, the label feels a bit funny, or, the colour, it seems a bit odd. So it's things like that that are really important, that, you need to practice the route. You need to go to the nursery, perhaps when it's not quite time to go there yet, but so the child can get used to the route, the fact that what's happening. Um, if you have access to things like a now and next board, so first we put these clothes, first we put this on, first we put that on, and then, it's really important that the child feels secure in what happens before they walk into the nursery. And if you're lucky enough to have uh, staff that will sometimes, I mean, I've done it before where I've had, children with autism, for example. I've had sessions with just the child and the adult within the nursery, so that the child can get used to the actual surroundings of the new environment, because it's a lot to take in for children who are neurodivergent, a lot to take in. But I think, Jenna, as you said, the preparation that goes in beforehand is really, really key, and it has to be personalised for the child. And for school, the nursery is to take as much experience, take as much from the caregivers as you can, because they're a vital source of information. But at the same time, nursery practitioners are experienced; they know what they're doing. It's creating that very solid partnership. I think is really key.
Another thing to add to yours about uniform is also, I know with some SEND children I've worked with, you know, hairstyles, having their hair done can be quite overwhelming. So, you know, parents have spoken to me and maybe starting to talk about like how they have their hair, and, you know, getting things that they're comfortable with, because I know that can be quite an overload, a sensory overload for children, and that can be quite, you know, that happens before school, and children can get quite upset just with those types of activities before they even arrive to school in the morning. So in terms of also preparation for nursery, there is also thinking about in terms of what school will be doing to support parents and children coming into the nursery. So if your child is starting in January, you may have already done a school visit where you've gone in, you know, for a welcome session, possibly with the teachers, or you could be doing that in January, where the teachers will invite you in, you and your child in, and it'll just be a play session. The other children shouldn't be there, the children that have started in September. Normally that's not the case, but it might be different depending on the nursery. So the children come in, you know, they'll have a look at the classroom, look at the environment, and they'll also, you know, get to know the teachers and starting to put the names to faces as well, which is really good for the children to know that when they then start, they'll know, oh, that's Miss So-and-so, that's Mr. So-and-so, or Mrs. So-and-so, whoever it may be. There is also home visits as well, normally. For some nurseries, they may not do it, but parents that I used to work with got really anxious about home visits, about like what to expect. Why is the teacher coming into my home? Are they going to be nosy? Are they going to be, you know, are they going to, in some cases, call social services? And it's nothing like that. It's simply for the child, you're going into their environment, they're seeing you, you know, an environment they're comfortable in, and it gives the, you know, they want to show you their toys maybe, or they just want to tell you about something that's happened at home. It's also a chance for parents to talk to the teacher privately, rather than in a school setting, if there's any concerns at home, maybe about the child, possibly SEND concerns, or if there's family issues at home that they need to make the teachers aware of that may impact their child in the classroom. From and it Yeah, from a SEND perspective, then, is there anything you want to add for the home visit and the visits in school?
I think home visits, as you said, are absolutely key, and I reiterate your point that when teachers or early years educators or nursery nurses or teaching assistants come to visit children at home, children and caregivers at home, we're not being nosy. We want to see the child in their natural environment. It's a sort of relaxed conversation we're having about, you know, the child. We want to know their interests. We want to know what they play with. We want to know what toys they have. And, you know, if we have those toys within the nursery, then it's a good idea to have those available for the child when they come in, because they see that connection between home and school. And I think particularly with neurodivergent children, some children may have a particular special interest or a fixed interest. So they might have a special object. For example, it might be a dinosaur, it might be, you know, a basket, it might be something, anything at all. And I think on the whole, I would let those children may need those objects um, to alleviate their anxiety, because that gives them security and comfort. And I think going into a new nursery setting can be, as you said, overwhelming, both sensory overwhelm, or it can be a source of anxiety, both for the child and sometimes for the parent or caregiver as well. So I think it's all about, how home visits, there's usually one. I think within the environment, coming into the environment for like settling in sessions or staggered starts, staggered starts can be done for nursery children. And I think it's all about that open communication that you have with the setting as a parent or a caregiver. But I think it's almost, I think the key thing is taking the lead from the child. The child will tell you through their communication, behaviour, how they're feeling about the nursery.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to note with the home visits, they do end up being quite special, because children then in year 6, like years later, will say, "Oh, I remember, Miss, when you came to see me at my home and came to know me," and that kind of thing. So they can be really beneficial. So then if we move on to the first few weeks of nursery, now normally when children start in January, there's been a lot more children that have already started in September, and they're very much within a routine. And from my experience as a nursery teacher, the children who started in January tended to be the younger children that would stay on, the full year, as well as from January. So they do January to September and then September onwards. So it'd be like a year and a half they'd be in nursery. That was normally the way. And they didn't actually, the January children didn't actually take that long to settle in compared to the September children, because they tend to follow the rules, routines of the September children. And so when they come in, normally the children, they might do, like you say, you kind of went on to it, a staggered start. Some children might just do the 3 hours straight away, but normally they do like an hour or 2 hours. And then based on that, the children that need extra support, who are finding it overwhelming, never been to a nursery setting before ever, they tend to, in some cases, they might just do half an hour for, the first few weeks even. And sometimes parents might come in. I think schools try to encourage, the child doing it independently, but, it depends on the child. So those first kind of few weeks, the children are, and the teachers are doing assessments, they're doing baseline assessments. So when the baseline assessments are going on, it's not normally sit down assessments. Some things like number work or letter work, if they're looking at that, they'll go into that. But they're doing a lot of play based assessments during that time, and seeing where the children are at, whether they are expected according to the school, the school assessment process. But it's very much looking at what the child can do and what they then need further help with along the lines. And the first few weeks are just settling in, getting the children used to that routine, confident, comfortable, knowing the rules, and getting them settled. And then once they kind of know what's happened regards to where, once they've done all those assessments and they know where the children are at, they can then move forward and help the children progress further. And it also gives a chance for teachers to get to know parents, and just see how they settle in, really. Can you add anything to that about the settling in and the kind of first few weeks of assessments, Simon?
I think you've got it spot on there. I think the first few weeks we're observing the children, how they interact with the environment, what resources do they use, how they interact with peers. And it's important to note that some neurodivergent children will not interact with peers at all, and we should be mindful of the fact that they may choose to access the provision by themselves, or to take things to an area and use them in a, maybe sometimes in a different way than we might imagine. So it might be that they're taking blocks, they're taking a box, they're taking like coloured cubes and using them in a particular way. And I think when they use those things, as as parents, caregivers, and practitioners, we should be celebrating the fact that this is the way that the children play. Because I think one thing that we've touched on is, if you ask children what did you do at nursery, they're probably going to say play, which is correct. They did play in nursery, but I think it's widening that understanding of what play is, because it's not just getting stuff and doing stuff with it. It's actually, when you observe children playing with materials, equipment, resources, it's fascinating to watch and sort of tune in to what they are doing, because it's true sort of child-led stuff. It's really led by the child, and I think we really have to go with that.
No, you said about correct me if I'm wrong, you said that often children say, oh, nothing, we did nothing during the day. Well, let's just go over a timetable normally in nursery. So, from my experience and what I used to do, because often parents will say, well, what did they do? Did they just play? And that is a misconception. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot within those 3 hours or 6 hours, depending on how long parents have booked for the day. But generally, the children will come in, they'll learn to take their own coat, their own bag off, as independent as possible from the very beginning, because not only have you got a lot of children to manage, but it gives the children a lot of satisfaction to do things by themselves. So they'll come in, they'll take everything, the coats, the bags, hang them all up, and then they tend to do a self-registration. And the purpose of this is to basically learn what their name looks like, because some children have never seen font before, they've never seen print before. So they learn what their name looks like, and they put it in a pot or stick it on the wall or something like that. And then they'll either go and choose from the classroom for a bit of, choose time while children are coming in, or there'll be a set out activity on the carpet for them to do. And then once all the children will come in, the teacher will then do a tidy up song or a tidy up time. And then it will go into like circle time, which is then the official register. They'll do like the days of the week, the weather, anything important happening that day, and then like a little activity that will normally be literacy or maths based, but very, very loose, obviously, because when they first start, their attention span is very, very short. And then once they've done that, then they normally go into choosing areas. But in the beginning, children will be taught how to use the areas, because again, it's that respect, looking after the environment. Um, but as the children settle more, the teacher will then maybe, or the TA, depending on who it is, will do some group work while assessing, observing the other children within the environment. And then this may include outdoor time as well, and indoor time, or indoor time on its own. And then they'll tidy up, they may go outside, or they may just have snack time if they've done indoor outdoor. And then normally they'll do like a story or something like that at the end, or an activity at the end to finish off the day. And then they collect all their things and they go out. Can you add anything to that that might be different? Because obviously I haven't been in the classroom for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think that, when they come in the morning, as independent as possible, take your coat off, put it in the right peg, put your bag where it needs to go. Sometimes it's straight into provision, straight into play. Um, Also, sometimes it's straight to the carpet to do a very quick, activity, register, and then maybe story or something like that. But I think your point about, attention and sort of like listening, that's really important, because children entering nursery, some of them might only be 2, some of them might be younger than 2, some of them might be 3. We have to remember that they, physically sitting for, any longer than 5 minutes is quite a struggle for really young children. So I think sprinkled within sort of like whole group times, ideally there'd be a lot of movement involved. So rather than sitting, we're going to be standing up and moving around. We're going to be singing, going and dancing. We're going to be moving around or stand, those sort of things, because children are primed for movement. And I think that's really, really important that happens. And I think the majority of the day is given to accessing the provision, whether it's inside or outside. And I think outside, there's an important point about weather and what it's like outside, because quite honestly, children should be able to experience all types of weather.
Mhm.
And I think if it's raining, we should, children should have ideally the appropriate clothing to be going out in the wet with, so wellies, raincoats, and I think that's really important because to experience, rain, wind, snow, all of that business is important for them to go outside, unless it's unsafe, of course, because um, yeah, we wouldn't want children going outside if it's not safe. And I think even very young children they can risk assess themselves, so they can say things like if it's slippery or if something's broken, or as a child said to me the other day, they said an animal had come to visit after animal must have come to visit because of something that was in the mud kitchen, and I think we all know what that was, and yeah, I think during the day there will be lots of play, but it will be interspersed with the whole class, so like coming together, and those group times are more for developing listening and attention. It's developing those communication skills. It's developing that whole sort of like whole class community. And for some children who have come to the nursery for that's their very first time away from their adults or first time at school. These are the first other children they're going to be with, and it's really important that those relationships in terms of teacher and children are developed, children teacher, but also the parents and caregivers, them having the opportunity as well to connect and build those relationships. There's a lot that goes on, probably that isn't officially put on the timetable, but there's a lot that happens.
Mhm.
And I think once you sort of peel back the layers into what's going on within nursery and indeed reception, you're amazed about what happens.
Mm. And in terms of them being independent, a lot of things go missing. So we do often say, because parents will do like the sticky nail or they'll sew them on or whatever. But in the end, we just say, just write their names on the labels with a pen, you know, a permanent marker or something, and teach your child to recognise their name on individual clothing, because children do get, they care about their things, and if they go to nursery and they can't find something, often they get very distressed about it, and it can, impact the whole day for them. It may be something small to an adult, but to a child, it's like huge. So do try and label things. Teach your child that you've labelled them, show them their name so they're starting to learn what their name looks like. And also, some children also had like particular stickers that they always had on. If they couldn't find their name, they'd have look for a sticker so they knew it was theirs, they could find it, and that kind of thing. Now, parents, because parents were very anxious in the beginning when children would start. So I would have lots of ways to communicate with parents. So, because parents wanted to know what the children were doing. So, for example, we might have had like a board outside with today we are learning about, so that the children know. Back in the day, I used to write in every child's diary every week about what they'd done every week, and that was really time consuming. Um, but that we couldn't keep that up. That was just too much workload with everything else going on. We would do newsletters, possibly early years newsletters. We would obviously stand on the door, making sure that we sent children out first before speaking to adults. We also, what else did we do? We had Too Simple, which was an assessment program, and we would update it with photographs of the children and what they were up to in the day and that kind of thing, or in the week, depending on how often you got a assessment. But we also always encouraged, parents to speak to us if they were concerned about anything, just not in the middle of, send them out at the end of the day or collecting them in the morning, because in some nurseries there's 40 plus children, and your job as a professional is to make sure they get out, and there are children that will try and run when you're not looking, and you have to be so careful. And parents do sometimes get upset with you if you don't answer them straight away, but just don't take it the wrong way if they just say, I will listen to you, I will take on your concern, but at the moment I just need to get these children out safely, because it's my job to safeguard these children and make sure they're okay. Is there any other ways that you communicate with parents in your roles?
I think mainly it is either on the door, or for those parents, because we had some children who were in wraparound care.
Yeah.
So children who were at breakfast club and after school club as well. So sometimes the only communication I had with those parents was either at parents' evening or via email at particular times. I think that sometimes some schools do like a wow form. So if the parents notice something particular at home, like they might have tried a certain food for the first time, or they might have got dressed by themselves, they put it on this little form and it goes up somewhere in the nursery and it gets really celebrated. So when one comes in, a really big fuss is made out of it. But actually what's probably even more significant, it highlights the partnership even more between home and the setting about how important it is. And that sort of makes me think now of because I had something that came in privately about someone asked something about toileting in the nursery. I mean, with toileting, I don't know, is it is it an expectation that a child is able to use the toilet, or is it an expectation that a child is attempting to use the toilet independently? What would you say is the line on that?
So years ago, all children had to come into like this was literally years ago. You weren't no children were allowed in nappies at all. However, things have changed since then, and what we used to say was, as long as children would try to go to the toilet on their own, because over the years many children were coming in nappies, and obviously when you've got lots of children in nappies, that means one member of staff has to be out a lot of the time, and if you don't have many staff, that then takes a massive toll on the classroom environment, because you sometimes you might just have a teacher and a TA in a classroom, and so if the TA's got to keep doing not nursery, what do I mean? Nappy runs, then obviously the classroom not suffers, but it impacts the classroom. So we used to say, as long as a child is trying to go to the toilet and will try to be independent, that's fine. But there were more and more children coming in nappies, and there were, for some reason, a lot of children were very scared of the toilet, like they had a proper fear of the toilet, and we didn't really know why. For some children, they were very, very tiny, and we weren't sure whether the size of the toilet was the reason they were scared to use it. But that was a thing that happened not loads, but that was a thing that was coming up. So we used to say, as long as they try and have a go, that's fine. And if they have an accident, we would always change them. The safeguarding policy was always there had to be 2 adults, when a child was being changed, because you couldn't let a child go out soiled or wet, or, because then that causes problems itself, rashes and things like that. But if a child was changed, we would always obviously bag everything up. If things were really bad, we would have to get rid of them, because they were just, really, really bad if a child had had an accident. Some parents would get upset about that, but, they just weren't reusable at all. And then also we would let the parent know that they've had an accident, and would record, that they'd had an accident as well. But yeah, just independence in trying to wash their hands, trying to go to the toilet, try and wipe themselves and that kind of thing. But yeah, back in the day it used to be that they had to, but that changed over the years because it was different types of children coming in now, and a lot of parents having to go to work earlier. So those basic skills at home aren't always necessarily implemented. So in a way, we have to teach those basic skills. So yeah. Now, if we look at parent involvement, that was encouraged a lot in school, and I presume it still is. But in terms of nursery parent involvement, we used to do like little shows, excuse me, for parents. We used to do, what did we do? We would do trips with parents. We would, parents would come on trips with us. We would do little assemblies sometimes, but they were normally in the classroom because the bigger room, the halls and stuff were quite intense for the children. Is there any other parent involvement that you know of, and how to support SEND children with that, with this change, if they get used to a routine but then suddenly parents are coming in, what can you
Yeah,
advise?
we used to do a program of events where we used to do on one particular, I think it was like a Wednesday, where the parents would come in on their own to another room where someone from the early years team would deliver like a short piece of like information. It might be about writing, or it might be about phonics or something like that. And then the next day, on the Thursday, the parents are invited into the nursery to see that in action. And so they had all the teaching bit beforehand, and then they came into class to sort of see it in action, which I think worked really well. And because we sort of emailed out when those dates are really early on, so parents had time to sort of plan themselves around it, because we have to remember that parents work, they've got other commitments, so as much notice as they can is welcomed by them. I think all the other things that you said about shows, especially this time of year, we're talking about nativity. The nativity I was involved with today, there was loads of parents there today, and I think also, especially that daily communication that you have with parents. When parents drop the child off in the morning, always make a conversation with them. They might be in a rush, but always, morning, how are you? How's it going? All of that sort of stuff. I think that those little things get appreciated by parents, and I think as much as you can sort of involve them, as much as you can show them what happens within school or nursery, I think it's right. I think it's only it can only be beneficial for them.
That's good. Now, when children start, I thought we'd go over emotions. If you're watching and you've got any questions about anything, just put it in the comment section and we'll get to it at the end. I know we're going through quite a bit, so if you've got any questions, please just add them in. But expecting different emotions when children start. Some children are absolutely fine when they start, but some children can find it too much and they can get very, very overwhelmed. Or it's just the initial burst of leaving their parents behind, and then once they're in and the parent goes, they're absolutely fine. It's not a problem at all. So it's just making sure that you are um, staff are trained to support children that are upset, and parents obviously are devastated when they see their child crying. It's a horrible, it's horrible to see a child upset. But often it's the case that children are fine when the parent goes. It's just that initial like, oh, mom's gone, dad's gone, whoever's gone. Can you comment on anything regarding emotions, Simon?
Yeah, I think children experience a wide variety of emotions. There's opportunity, they're sad, they're upset, they can be frustrated, angry even. And I think we've got to remember that, the behaviour that they're showing, the emotions that children are showing, they can't help it. It's not on purpose. They're not just doing it for attention. Actually, it's connection they're doing it for. They want to connect with the new adults or the new children that are in the nursery setting. And I think it's very important that we we bear that in mind, and I mean, I expect you're the same. Like we've seen everything from crying to throwing themselves on the floor to running around. All of those things are natural reactions to, that a new environment. And it's our job as parents and caregivers in order to be able to look at that behavior, look at what's going on, and then we think, right, what is that communicating to us? What is that showing us? Well, actually, if a child is really upset, they're going to need comfort. They're going to need, they're going to need some support in what is there, what can help them within the nursery settings. So it's all about, you seeing the emotions as the iceberg. You see the emotions above the water as part of the iceberg, but underneath there's such a lot of other things going on in terms of, you know, anxiety, stress, separation, all of that stuff as well. And it's it's coming to the fact that we need to support those children, and we have to support them in the way that we think is best for them, whether that is can the caregiver stay a little bit longer, can the caregiver maybe sit and talk to the adult while the child or another adult takes the child off to do something else. And we have to go from there. We really have to go from here, because these are young children, these are really young children, and we have to think, well, actually, they're still rapidly developing, these children. They're rapidly developing, and they cannot control, the way that they're feeling because of the way that they're developing. And we have to think, well, we have to help them support. We have to co-regulate. That's the phrase I'm looking for. We have to co-regulate with the children, and we have to find the best way to help them. And it may take a week, it may take 6 weeks, it may take longer than 6 weeks, but we keep going until we find the way to support that child. I think it's crucial.
Yeah. Normally in nursery, there's a lot of work done on emotions. So we'll do because that is one of the concerns with technology at the minute, is that when some children come in, you can clearly see there's a divide between children who have used iPads a lot or some form of technology, where to other children who have maybe used it only a little bit, and they don't really recognize emotion or that kind of thing. So we have to do visuals. So this is happy, this is sad, this is angry. And then through learning what these visuals look like, these emotions look like, then we can apply it to, when they are upset. Because often, we've seen it with older adults who maybe go on the wrong path as they get older. They use physical communication, violence in some cases, instead of they don't have the words to communicate how they feel, and unfortunately it gets them into situations which are really, really difficult, ugly situations. And things happen down the line. So by teaching children very, very young emotions, the vocabulary linked to emotions, if they are having a really bad day, they can use their language, the language that is appropriate for them. I am sad, I am angry, I am because, this is because, which will help them as they grow older. Because we know with young boys, they they really struggle as they get, for me, girls and boys are quite confident when they're younger. um Girls are quite out there, but then they grow up and they kind of mask. And then boys, they're very open with their emotions. Many young boys would be getting upset, visibly upset, and they're comfortable to do that when they're very tiny. But again, somewhere along the line, society tells them you can't show that you're upset. And then that's why we have so much problem with men's mental health further down the line. The suicide rate and things like that. So it's giving children that vocabulary when they're younger, and when they come into nursery, if they don't have that, then we provide in a nursery, in your child's nursery, you should see a lot of visual imagery. You know, the routine should be visual. First we're doing this, next we're doing that, after that we're doing that. And then all the areas should have pictures of objects, their names beside them, so they're constantly seeing that vocabulary, that language, and they can start pointing to it, and you know, they start to associate language and with communication and helping them along the way. Can you add anything to that?
I think in addition to that, I think we're very lucky at the moment in the fact there's been a real sort of rise in the number of like picture and storybooks that deal specifically with emotions. And I think it's important that we, you know, share those sort of age appropriate stories with our very youngest children, and, you know, relating the emotions within the story to, you know, to talking with the children. So, for example, there's a wonderful book that I used a couple of weeks ago called Misha Makes Friends, and it's about a girl who finds it really difficult to make friends. And this book really broke down what it means to maybe not have friends, or but you want to make a friend. And it's important that when we're talking about emotions, as you said, we name the emotion, we show them, we show children what that might look like, because it's quite scary sometimes. Like I'm just imagining a 3-year-old who's angry and they don't know why they're angry, or they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know how to go from angry to maybe calm. And we need to show them how to do that, whether it's things like, you know, going for a walk, or whether we have a sensory tool, or whether we want some time alone, or we just need to rest. You know, all of those, you know, those strategies that we know works with young children. And actually, not just young children, but any child. I mean, I myself, I use things like sensory tools and sort of fidgets and stuff like that, because it helps me to be calm. And it's finding what works for that child, because a walk for one child will not necessarily work for another child, but we'll find the best way to do it. And sometimes, as you said, it's using visuals. Sometimes I have, you know, if I hold up my visuals at the moment, the amount of visuals I carry around with me at the moment, this is my bunch of visuals that I carry with me. But I know that because they're all pullable as well, I can pull one section out at a time, so I can do like this and whatever. And it's it's very important that, you know, we give them the tools, we give the children the tools they need to be able to communicate how they're feeling. Because sometimes, you know, if you're in a moment of distress, if you're very upset about something, you might not be able to communicate because you're so consumed by this particular emotion. So sometimes pointing at something, or, you know, gesticulating at something to help you. So visuals, as you say, that visuals are an extremely important tool that not just teachers and educators can use, parents and caregivers can use them as well.
Yeah, definitely. You can, if you do want visuals, websites like Twinkle. Um, this isn't an ad, I've used Twinkle myself. Twinkle have visuals. You can make it on Canva. I do have Canva, and I do have Twinkle, paid for that by myself. You can make it on there, just simple pictures, you know, a picture of a toilet with the word toilet. You know, you can just do it for your part of your child's day, just to help them get into a routine. And if your child is struggling with emotions, is struggling with moving on to the next activities, visuals can really help, because you can be like, well, now we're having snacks, have a picture of some food, and then next we're going to play, and then finally we're going to get ready to go to bed, or something like that, whatever, you know, the routine is. Now, the final thing we're going to go on to is if parents have send concerns. If there's anything we've talked about so far that you've got questions about, please leave them below. Simon's had a comment going, yes, Simon, so one of your fans. And then we've had another one from Cups of Calm and More, like the name, said yes. Thank you very much. If you've got questions, please leave them down below, because after this part, we'll answer them. Or if you think of questions later on, you can send either of us a message, which is not a problem. Right. So from a teacher's point of view, from my point of view, when I was a nursery teacher, if parents had to send concerns or a teacher had to send concerns, to be honest, it was a lot of observation in the beginning, because they were quite reluctant to say, oh, a child's ADHD or autism or whatever it might be, dyslexia or whatever it might be. It was a lot of observation on the teacher's part, on the TA's part. It was communication with the SEND lead and asking them advice and things like that. It was looking at the environment. If you're noticing certain elements, starting to set up the environment so it's most classrooms now try and work towards being more SEND friendly. And oh, hello Charlie, you okay? And SEND environment, really, they want, they're trying to make it more inclusive, so classrooms should really be more inclusive, especially nursery classrooms. So really it's just keeping a record of the child and what's happening with them, and because it's very, very hard to get diagnosis at the minute. I think the lists are quite, the people waiting, the parents waiting, isn't it like a year or something, or even more than a year
Yeah,
that they're waiting?
it's more than a year. I mean, for adults it's at least 2 years, if not more. But for children, when you put the referral in, yeah, it could be anything from a year, 2 years. It's a lengthy process. I mean, this is part of the issue, that there's a lot of referrals going into the system, but there isn't enough people within the system to diagnose or to see the children.
Oh, right. And what would you say, so if a parent came to you and said, I've got concerns that my child is this, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd ask the parents, sort of, tell me about the concerns with as much sort of real life examples as possible. So if it's a speech and language or communication observation that's been made, what is it that's being said? Do they, I call it clipping sounds. So when they say something like, train, do they miss like the TR sound? Do they say it in a different way? Things like, also, it could be something to do with like physical movement. It could be the way that they hold things. It could be the way that they walk. It could be behaviors. It could be repetitive behaviors. It could be schematic behaviors. But I would encourage the parent to say everything that they can, and don't sort of hold back with it. Just say it how it is, and then explain to the parent or caregiver that I would then either speak to the Senko or inclusion manager, or when I was early years lead, I used to sometimes just start the process off through a referral. So if it's speech and language concern, then you do a speech and language referral. If it's more than that, I can't quite remember which order it goes to, because sometimes you can do a paediatric referral, which is if it's more than speech and language, if it's sort of neurodivergent traits that are being shown. Usually I think they have to do speech and language first, but I think you can have multiple referrals going in at the same time. But I think it's always, for me, the earlier the better. If you've got concerns in nursery about your child, then I think you need to speak to the professionals working with your child as soon as you can, in order to get the support. Because, well, by support, we're talking an educational health care plan. This can take a long time to arrive with the necessary, with not the necessary, with some funding in order to support your child, because these things take a lot of time. They can take up to a year. They could take 6 months, and it's important that it happens as soon as you can. So don't shy away from raising concerns. You know, even with things like toileting, you know, if you say to us, you know, I need help with my child going to the toilets, then you know there's signposts, there's things that we can recommend in order to be able to help you. So be upfront, be straight to the point, give us as much detail as you can, because it will only benefit your child in the long run.
Yeah. One thing that happened a lot after the lockdown, I found in my experience, was that schools started to create their own send environments, send classrooms. There was one school in particular, excuse me, one school in particular who had a lot of children who needed support, who were, send, and the individual children, and they ended up using one of their spare classrooms as a send environment to help those children, because unfortunately there just aren't the places at the minute, and it is a major factor why home education is on the rise, because children are struggling in state schools. Staff just aren't given the training. They try as much as they possibly can to change the environment, but if a child needs a lot of support, then you know it's very, very difficult. But like you say, early intervention, schools often have their own types of interventions as well, that their own. Some schools I worked with, they had like different stages of their own interventions as soon as they noticed something, and they started to put it in place. So some schools are known, for supporting SEND families a lot better than others. So if you don't find that the nursery you're in is right for your child, you can look at other environments. You can ask online on Facebook groups, and I've seen many parents say, my child has got this, can anyone recommend a school that is good, that supports children with this really, really well? Because you do get the honest truth from parents. They're normally quite honest about, yes, it's really good, or no, don't, I wouldn't take your child there. So but I think we've come to our end of what we're going to discuss. So if anyone has questions, please let us know in the chat. If you've got any comments, great. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been okay for you. If you've got any questions later on that you think of, send me or Simon a message, and hopefully we can answer them for you. But thank you, Simon, for being my first person to chat to on Instagram Live. It's been a pleasure. I am going to try and save this. It said I can save. So hopefully I'll save it and I'll be able to upload it as, something on Instagram maybe, and I'll do it on TikTok as well. But I don't think there's any questions. But again, thank you, Simon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jenna. A pleasure as always.
Lovely. See you soon. Bye.
Bye bye.